The central part of the Eurasian continent is home to a vast desert. For centuries, this area formed an important transportation link between the east and the west. It was also a place where the nomadic culture of the north and the agricultural culture of the south intersected. With some 2,000 years of human history, this area is of considerable historical importance. The Heihe River Basin stretches through China's Qinghai Province, Gansu Province, and the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region. This parched inland area has been inhabited for centuries by various peoples, each with their own distinctive religions, cultures, and lifestyles. The oasis, with its abundance of water, is a provider of life in this arid land. However, water shortages in this region over recent years have become a major issue. Over the past 40 years, the lakes at the end of the Heihe River have disappeared one after the other. In 1997, the last lake completely vanished. Shallow wells near the houses in the lower reaches area once produced ample water, but these have now completely dried up, some to the extent that they have been totally buried by sand. Now, people must travel far from their homes to deep pump-driven wells in order to get water. Here is some precious footage taken in 1927 by an expedition led by Swedish geographer Sven Hedin. The footage is of the lower reaches of the Heihe River, known then as Ejingol. Thick jungle-like woods and the billowing current of the Heihe. Even in September and October, with the least amount of water flow of any months during the year, the expedition had an extremely difficult time traversing the river. But now, the only time a stream can be seen flowing down the riverbed is for a short period each winter. Usually, all that can be found is sporadic puddles of water along the vast riverbed. What are the reasons behind this water shortage? To discover the answers to this question, a joint research project has been initiated comprising of Chinese and Japanese scholars from a variety of different fields. The scholars have already begun on-site surveys to study the 2,000-year relationship between people and water in this area. We visited the Heihe River Basin at the end of summer 2004. Our objective was to check on the progress of the in-situ investigations that had begun in 2002 and to observe the current status of the river basin. The Heihe was once a precious waterway running from south to north right through the middle of the desert. From the Mongolian steppes to the Heihe corridor, the Heihe River has played an important role in human history, touching people as far away as in Yunnan via an ancient road running through Tibet, connecting the southern province with the river's shores. The first place we visited was Gansu Province, home to the middle reaches of the Heihe and lined with the most prosperous of the oasis cities. At the northern foot of the Chilean mountain range is the oasis city of Jiangye. Nicknamed since ancient times the Golden City, it is well known for its fertile land. Even today, the city boasts a population of approximately 700,000 people and is sometimes called the pantry of the Heihe corridor in reference to its food production capability, sustained by the plentiful water brought by the Heihe River. But what exactly is the situation with the recent water shortage in the region? Water drawn from the Heihe supports the extensive agricultural irrigation in Jiangye. Dense, lush tobacco leaves. Mass production agriculture is flourishing as the development of farmland progresses and large-scale farms producing export crops increase. Naturally, this necessitates the securing of significant water resources. We are measuring the amount of water evaporation from the fields and the land in general in the Heihe Oasis over an extended period of time. It is believed that the amount of water that evaporates from the oasis exceeds that evaporating from the desert. We are endeavoring to discover why the water is disappearing by analyzing a range of surveyed data, including rainfall, evaporation, and river flow rate data. Abandoned buildings on the outskirts of Heihe. These used to belong to the pastoral Yugu who once lived here. When water shortage became an issue, the Chinese government posited these livestock farmers as one of the causes of the problem. The government claimed that the herdsmen's animals were stripping the area of vegetation. So the Chinese government adopted a policy of forced migration, what it terms eco-migration, to permanently resettle the farmers in a newly developed area. These are the remnants of where they used to live. Slightly downstream from Heihe, at Zhangxia, the volume of water that travels from the middle reaches to the lower reaches has been monitored. Every year, less and less water makes it to the lower reaches area from the middle reaches. When surveying water, while it is important to investigate natural factors such as changes in rainfall and river flows, it is also important to consider human factors at the same time, such as changes in population and water usage volumes. The various observation results to date show that agriculture in the vicinity of the middle reaches is now using large quantities of groundwater in addition to river water. While continuing our field surveys, we next travel from Heihe upstream to Liyuanhe and focus our attention on the Qi Glacier in the upper reaches of the Heihe. Both Tibetans and Yugu are found all the way along the upper reaches, their livelihood centered on grazing sheep, goats, and yaks. We have arrived at the headwaters of the Heihe. Water pools from the glaciers of the Chilean mountains upstream and flows down through the rich oasis towards the lower reaches and its final destination in Ejina. 3,800 meters above sea level, we've reached the base camp of the glacier survey team. The team is measuring the flow of water emanating from a glacier of the Chilean mountain range over a 4-year period. But our target lies further up still, a glacier that extends from 5,100 meters above sea level to the 4,300 meter mark. A pole is buried in the glacier itself. We are measuring the length of the pole protruding above the ice line every year to determine the rate of glacial thawing. After pouring a small amount of salt water into the river upstream, we then measure the electrical conductivity of the river water downstream to determine the rate of flow. The glacier is thawing at an extremely rapid pace. Approximately 10% of its mass has disappeared over the last 20 years. As the glacier shrinks, the excess water flows into the river. The volume of water in the river has been increasing over recent years, but even so, water shortage in the middle reaches area continues to worsen. This has led people to increasingly rely on groundwater, large quantities to meet their various needs. But what will happen if people in the plentiful oasis region of the Middle Reaches continue to draw upon the groundwater that has taken centuries, if not millennia, to accumulate? In all likelihood, the water will simply continue to silently disappear. Tree samples with annual growth rings are being collected from near the glacier. By analyzing these samples, it is possible to identify changes in the condition of the grasslands over time, in addition to determining past changes in temperature and rainfall. We returned once again to the middle reaches before heading even further downstream to the lower reaches. Jiuquan. Prosperous since ancient times, this verdant town stands at a divergence in the road. One path leads to the nomadic Mongols' homeland of the Mongolian steppes, the other to Jiayuguan, which marks the westernmost point of the Great Wall of China, and now a bustling tourist spot. At first glance, there seems to be plenty of water. It's hard to imagine a tourist town with such an abundance of water all around as suffering from a water shortage. Expansive cotton fields, which all need a considerable amount of water to cultivate. We left Jiuquan behind and headed for Egina, as far downstream as it is possible to go. The Green Gate, the entrance to Egina. Egina is an oasis in the middle of the lower reaches. It is also a place that has been fought over by the nomads and the agrarian people for the past 2,000 years. Here you see the history-laden ruins of Heichang, a walled city that flourished during the Xixia dynasty and the Mongolian-ruled Yuan dynasty. Nearby are the remains of irrigation canals and fields which once supported crops. At the height of Heichang's glory, the Heihe River followed a course further east, closer to the city. In addition to natural causes, it is said that the change of course of the river can possibly also be attributed to human intervention as the result of wars and other historical events. Here, the water shortage is particularly serious, to the extent that the nearby lake completely dried up some 10 years ago. In 2003, the Chinese government adopted an extensive policy of introducing irrigation canals and restored the lake to its former state. Lake Sogonur, brimming with water. Is the water shortage really a thing of the past? We are investigating the amount of surface evaporation and moisture loss by tree leaves and grass in the Egina area. We are also investigating the overall movement of water in the area by measuring such things as the air temperature, ground temperature, and amount of moisture in the desert, as well as the amount of water drawn from wells. Faint lines left on the barren earth. These mark what used to be the shores of Lake Tian'e. Shells can be found along the traces of the shoreline. By determining how old the shells are, it is possible to discover when the lake existed and how much water it held. Egina, a place that can testify to a long relationship between people and water. There is little doubt that investigating the historical changes in the relationship between people and water will provide clues as to how to solve the present water situation. In days gone by, the reeds grew so thickly in Egina that they could have hidden a camel. That the river water flowing into the lower reaches now is drastically decreasing is undeniable. Although the sight of a water-filled lake may make you believe there isn't a water shortage, it does nothing to address the actual problem. It would appear that the reality is, rather, that large quantities of the precious groundwater that has taken many years to accumulate is being drained to sustain the current above-ground situation. The Oasis Project's research period is 5 years. We have already passed the midway point of our research. Just how will the relationship between nature and water play out? What is needed is not just scientific research into nature, but also consideration of the interaction between nature and mankind, factoring in both human culture and history. Today, as we become ever more aware of the global environmental issues we face, the Oasis Project will continue on with its important research.